How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going through some more specific tips for specific bosses, just like we did in the past with ED1 and then we did ED3, and it's just stuff that I've picked up along the way. As you learn bosses, you pick up different things and you do things differently that make your life better, and these are things that won't be included in guides, things that you just think, that's a good idea, I'm going to try that out, and then it seems to be amazing and it just makes your life a hell of a lot better. You get faster kill times and it becomes more efficient, stuff like that. So the point of this video and the point of this little mini series that I'm going to do is basically just show you guys all the little things that I've picked up and added to my kills to see if it makes your life better as well. I'm not saying this is the absolute best way to do the bosses and all these things that I'm going to tell you about, this is the best things that you should be doing and you have to do them. That's not true whatsoever. It's all just stuff that may help you out, may not help you out. If you want to apply it, give it a shot. If it does help, let me know in the comments. I'll be very happy to hear. Now, at fear of saying things at least like another 20 times, let's get into this, shall we? So the first boss we're going to go with is Raksha. The reason being is you guys left so many comments on the last one saying do Raksha, do Raksha, do Raksha. There was a ton of them. So we're going to do Raksha because that's what you guys said. Now, I'm far from a Raksha pro, so keep that in mind, but there's little things in here that I can let you know that will probably help you out a little bit. You can apply them here and there, and then once you improve, then you can change them, take them away, do whatever needs to be done to make that times even better if that's what your goal is. So keep in mind what I'm saying is not absolute do this, have to do that, okay? So to start off, what I would suggest you do is actually, if you're brand new to this fight, and you are not experienced in prayer flicking whatsoever, this is going to be a huge part of this fight. Prayer flicking is super important, and what I suggest you do, and what I always tell people to do who ask how to learn Raksha, is enter a practiced instance and just prayer flick. Just focus on the prayer flick, learn his animations, learn the timing, and just learn to prayer flick between stuff. I would actually suggest using soul split between each prayer flick, as it does make it a little bit easier, at least it did for me at least, because this way you're not actually pressing the same prayer twice in a row should you actually get that same attack twice. This is possible if you're not in melee distance, so just keep that in mind. Like I say, learning the prayer flicking for this boss is definitely something that's going to take a lot of practice and is definitely one of the hardest aspects of it, because you're not used to prayer flicking as much through all three combat styles from the other bosses, but at the same time you still have to deal with mechanics too, so it can be a little bit overwhelming. But if you come in practice mode and just get used to prayer flicking first and then move on to the other stuff and add it all together, it will make your life a bit easier. The next thing that's been super useful for me is actually having the Limitless ability. Limitless is a great ability to have anyway, so I would suggest anyone who doesn't have it actually looking into it, as it does make your damage in a death swiftness, for example, increase by quite a lot, seeing as you can get more thresholds off and you can get them off faster as well, so it definitely is something worth investing in if you do have the spare money. That being said, Limitless can be absolutely brilliant for helping you skip the first phase's magic bomb. If you are aiming to get as much DPS as possible, this is a pretty good target to get to. Being able to phase before that magic bomb actually comes through stops you from getting stunned, stops you from having to use a defensive to deal with it, and it's just a great target to aim for in terms of DPS. Limitless can be absolutely brilliant for this. Being able to use your thresholds in your Death Swiftness or your Sunshine or your Berserk almost straight away, as long as you pair it with like an adrenaline potion or something, can get you through that so fast. It's possible to do it without it, of course, but this could be the difference between you getting it and not getting it, and it will just make your life a lot easier. So what I would normally do is go into the fight, and as soon as I surge forward to start the fight, I would drop my Death Swiftness, use Sunshine, and then use Limitless straight away so I can fire off anything like Wild Magic or Snapshot if you're using range, things like that, and just get as much thresholds and much DPS out as you possibly can before he even does the spin. Once you get to phase 3, you're going to have to clear off the anima pools on the side unless you've got some insane DPS for some reason. And you can skip those if he even does one of the heals, but basically those pools on the side are going to heal Raksha and push his enrage up every single time he does a spec. When he does a spec, he's going to take charges from those pools, and the best way to clear them off, in my opinion, is to actually have a halberd style weapon and laceration boots and use bladed dive on the pools. The way this works is because the halberd actually hits in a decent range, it does hit all of the pools as you land, as long as you click in the right place. The way you want to do it is basically target the furthest pool away from you as you bladed dive each time. That will place you in the middle of them, and that way you can clear all the pools off as you bladed dive through them. As for choices on the halberd style weapons, I use Masuda's War Spear, but you have to have that perk of Equilibrium 4, and you also have to have the Turmoil Curse turned on, so I would suggest even just investing in something a little bit better than that. But as long as you do, you'll be absolutely fine. This clears off the pools super easy. It is the fastest way to do it, absolutely, and you can actually start doing this on the last couple of rockfalls during the phasing between phase 2 and phase 3. So once you do the rockfall, you can still put out some DPS, and then as soon as you get towards the end of the rockfall bit, you can just start bladed diving across, and then you can just get back onto Raksha. If you don't target the pool that's furthest away from your character at the time, you'll find that you actually just land on the edge of it, and you'll end up leaving some on the other side of it too. This can be a bit of a pain, because if you do leave them, like I said, it's going to heal Raksha, it's going to push his enrage up. You definitely just want to make sure you get rid of all of these pools so that doesn't happen. When you do get into phase 3, he's going to spawn a minion that will attack you and reduce your overload timer. What you want to do is clear this off pretty much straight away. Now, ideally, a good way to do this is to put both bleeds on the actual minion and you can just leave it, as it will spawn across the other side of the room from you normally, but you just want to put bleeds on it, make sure it walks the bleeds, and you'll be fine. You can just ignore it and get back on Raksha. That's probably the fastest way to do it and the least ability expensive way. Like, you don't want to be using thresholds on it if you can help it, but on magic, you kind of have a little bit of a benefit. The reason being is, if the minion is besides Raksha, you can use Greater Chain on the minion, and then you can throw any threshold, whatever you want, at the actual minion. Like, Wild Magic is great, you can throw it at that, and you'll still damage Raksha, but you'll also clear the minion off straight away. One thing to keep in mind, though, is if the summon and Raksha are literally side by side, for some reason, casting Greater Chain on Raksha will not always hit the summon. It just doesn't happen sometimes. It's actually so damn annoying, but it does happen, and it can waste your Greater Chain or whatever. You just want to cast it on the actual summon first, because most of the time it just won't go from Raksha to the summon, but it will always go from the summon to Raksha. I don't know if this is something that's an issue with just big targets with the way Greater Chain works, because I have seen it in other places too, but just make sure you cast that on the actual summon. But yeah, put bleeds on it, let it walk. It should die before it even reaches you. The next bit is, as you are running through phase 4 and you get that little cutscene where you can't really do much, you can actually right click right before where Raksha is going to be, and you can queue up to throw a vulnerability bomb. So if you click your keybind for vulnerability and then right click right in front of where Raksha is going to be, it will say throw vulnerability bomb, and then as soon as you get through and the little cutscene ends, you can click that and your vulnerability bomb will throw it immediately, and it'll be right there next to Raksha. It makes it a little bit easier because you can get it done straight away and you don't have to sort of mess around with misclicks and stuff. Not only that, you can queue up things like smoke clouds straight away as soon as you get through, because there's been no casts, there's been no abilities or anything, so it will cast that immediately, literally as soon as you get in, as long as you press the keybind. So you can apply smoke cloud and vulnerability very quick and very easily immediately after you phase into phase 4. This is worth doing anyway, even if you have just reapplied vuln or anything like that, because it's just a good way to make sure that you don't forget or miss any other timings. On the last phase, quite a lot of people actually run around the entire room and pick up all of the anima buff things for the damage, but you don't actually need to pick all of these up. From what I can tell, you only need around about 8 of these before you start getting diminishing returns on it. Picking the other ones up will still give you a slight increase in damage, but because with 7 or 8 of them, you're actually hitting the hit cap fairly often, it does end up being diminishing returns, seeing as it's not going to push you past that hit cap. So all you really need to do most of the time is run to one side and then run directly back to where your death swiftness is. If you've got 7 or 8 of these, I wouldn't worry about getting the rest. I would just get back to DPS, and this should actually help with your kill times, as you're not spending an extra 10 seconds just circling the entire room, dealing with a stun for example as well. Those extras just aren't really worth the extra. For the last little tip, continuing on from what was kind of the last one, saying if you didn't have to run to the other side of the room, then happy days. Sometimes you're going to get yourself like 2 or 3 anima on your side of the room, and you're just going to have to make that run. You're just going to have to run from your side to the other side. Now, unless you're super fast using surges and bladed dives, chances are you're going to have to either run onto the platform again to make sure that he doesn't use the mage bomb, or you could do what I do and just literally press anticipate when it's due to come and just keep running. As long as you actually don't place that bomb in a stupid place, you'll be fine. There's 4 places that you can walk up to the ramps and get into the melee distance of Raksha, so as long as you don't block all of them, then there's not going to be a problem whatsoever. This only hits once, so the magic bomb is only one of them, and it will only put 1 lot of smoke on the ground, so as long as you don't re-enter that smoke, you'll be good to go. So what I would normally do is just press anticipate, keep running, collect all my stuff, and then as soon as I'm done and the magic bomb has dropped, just get back into melee distance ready for the next spin. Alright, so that brings us to the end of Raksha. Hopefully some of those tips were useful to you. Let me know in the comments if any of them were, and if you have any extra tips, or if you have any improvements on my tips, because you definitely could do, then get those down in the comments as well. These are all just things that I've picked up along the way that improve my times. I'm sure there's definitely ways to get better times, seeing as people have a hell of a lot better kill times than I do. But for the people who are learning and want to just improve in any way possible, I do hope that some of these tips do help you out. Okay, so let's move on to our next boss. The next boss that I have tips for today is going to be Nex. Nex is a boss that a lot of new players aim to learn, as it is sort of like an entry-level, high-end boss. So if you can do Nex in a solo, then you're in a pretty good position to actually go out and start learning all the other bosses as well. That being said, a lot of people do struggle with this boss, so I figured it'd be interesting just to throw a few tips in here. There's not going to be too many, because most of them are kind of just common knowledge at this point, as that boss is very old. But I am going to include a few of them just so you guys can add little things to your kills and maybe just improve quality of life a little bit, just like the other ones. Okay, so next, at the beginning of the fight, she's going to spawn in the middle of the room and she'll call out all of the minions' names. As soon as she calls out Glacie's names, this is a great time to use Devotion. and then as soon as she gets back to the first minion again to start the fight, press anticipate and throw a vulnerability bomb at Nex's feet. If you do this at the right time, you'll have everything queued up ready to go, and as soon as Nex is attackable, the vulnerability bomb will apply, and your global cooldown will be ready again from using anticipate to allow you to attack immediately. This just helps out with the beginning bit just a little. If you can phase that before she does the there is bit, it's just a little bit convenient. Second thing that I do is you can actually bladed dive from the inner circle bit to the outer edge, just across the gaps. Those gaps there, you can bladed dive and surge through them. But if you phase Nex and you're ready to go and kill the first minion, you can actually just bladed dive directly up and across that to the minion. This will literally just save you like a second. It's not going to be much. It'll save you the time from running up the ramp and back to the minion. That's if you start on the inside. I start standing right next to Nex so I can use Vuln Bomb and walk bleeds and stuff. But I mean, people do stand on the outside. I just like to stand on the inside. So you can bladed dive directly out. On the second phase of Nex, she does chase you around the room if you are wearing all range gear, and she will get into melee distance. She will absolutely tear you to shreds with type plus damage if you don't get away from her. A lot of people just kite this phase, and that is what I do as well. But if you're struggling with this, keep in mind you can wear a malevolent helmet and laceration boots in this phase only, and that will stop her from going in melee distance. If you chuck that on just before you phase into this, she won't chase you into melee distance, and she won't do that stupid type plus tick damage. So you can just get through this phase slow and steady. You lose a little bit of damage, but not all that much because you're wearing melee gear. But once you phase through and get into blood phase, you can chuck your other gear back on and completely forget about it at this point. For other people, honestly, just using surge and bladed dive to stay away, chucking bleeds on her is an absolutely great thing to do. During blood phase, what you can do is once she stops running around and just stands still to do her phasing, you can get a Vuln Bomb with your keybind and then right click underneath Nex to throw that Vuln Bomb straight away. While she's phasing, you can still apply things like vulnerability and smoke cloud to her, and I'd say for the average person getting from the beginning where you put Vuln Bomb to blood phase, it's probably a perfect time for you to reapply the vulnerability, especially seeing as you're going to need to do as much DPS to get through the blood phase to make your life as easy as possible. As for the DPS itself, you can queue up a snipe ready for as soon as she's attackable again. This takes a little bit of practice, but a good cue to go off is she raises her wings up during the phasing. As soon as she raises her wings up, you can queue up a snipe, and that will fire just as soon as she's targetable again without actually healing her. Other than that, if you have ruby backruminal bolts, use them until the end of this phase, and then once you phase through this, you want to change to something else. Everyone suggests things like dragonstone or diamond bolts. These are all going to be great for helping you out the rest of the kill, but ruby bolts really aren't worth using after the blood phase. Some really useful information to know about is as you phase into the ice phase, if Nex has just done the blood sacrifice in the blood phase, the first mechanic you're going to get in the ice phase is going to be contain this. If you phase after the siphon and before the blood sacrifice, then you're going to get the prison first. If you're someone who struggles to do enough DPS to get through this pretty fast and you do sometimes die to the prison, I would suggest actually waiting until you get the blood sacrifice again, and that way you can guarantee it's contain this, then the prison, and then another contain this, and that should help out a hell of a lot on getting you through the ice phase without having to get multiple prisons. That being said, to deal with the prisons, if you don't have a vitality potion with you, bring one along. You can literally just drink that. Even if you're stunned, you can drink a vitality potion. Just click it in your inventory and you'll be absolutely fine. The final tip that I have is on the Zaros phase, the very last phase, you don't want to use Death Swiftness. There's no point. Don't use Death Swiftness. Don't use Sunshine, because just in case you didn't know, all of the hits on this phase are capped. You can't actually hit past a certain damage cap, and there is no point in using Death Swiftness or any damage boosting ability like that, because it just won't hit past that. Not that you'll be using Sunshine anyway, because you're probably just going to want to range next anyway, but if you are going to use an ultimate here either way, I would suggest using Deadshot, which does a lot of damage over time, and it is smaller hits, but it does a lot of damage, so it's still a good ultimate to use, and it isn't affected by the damage cap. So this is probably the best ultimate to use, and then chuck on your bleeds, walk next, that sort of stuff. But otherwise, yeah, don't bother using Death Swiftness or anything like that, because it's just damage capped and there's no point in doing it. Also, don't use things like tendrils, because using ranged tendrils, the shadow tendrils here, it's just going to hurt yourself and it won't hit past the damage cap either, so maybe just don't use that either. Hopefully these tips helped you out in Nex as well. I'm sure plenty of you would have known most of these, but for those of you that didn't, I hope it did help you out. That's going to be the end of the video, guys, so if you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new. In fact, guys, okay, YouTube tells me how many of you guys return to all these videos and watch them. Freaking subscribe. It makes your life easier on finding the videos, and also it makes my day as well to see that number go up. It's a numbers game, and I like to see those numbers climb. Either way, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to my channel members for all your extra support. I really appreciate it, as always. Your names will be on screen right now. Anyone else is interested in joining the channel members, there's a join button by the sub button. You can support the channel while also getting yourself some perks, so give that a click and you can see what perks you do get. Otherwise, thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.